Hello and welcome to the Humans versus Retirement podcast. I'm your host, Dan Haylett, and today I am super excited to be joined by my great friend, Mr. Neil Bage. Now, the reason why I am so excited is every time I have a conversation with Neil, I get so many light bulb moments that come up, and I know that's what you guys as listeners are going to experience today. So I just want to briefly say, why is Neil here? Neil is here because he is, without doubt, one of the world's leading experts on the subconscious behaviours that drive our decisions, and is renowned for bridging that complex scientific theory. So hopefully we won't get too long of words today. So it's a complex scientific theory with real world understanding, and especially when it comes to our decisions that involve money. Now, Neil is a co-founder of Shaping Wealth, a wonderful learning platform that is truly transforming the human experience of money. Neil, welcome to the Humans versus Retirement podcast.
Dan, thank you for having me on. I mean, you kind of set me up for a fail with such an amazing introduction, right? Because now I've got to perform at the highest level possible. So let's see if I can. Hopefully I can.
I've got no doubt. So really, I just want the listeners to get a brief understanding of you, your journey. You've got a very interesting journey that we won't cover off in half an hour. But I'd love just to get a sense of, why you're here and where you've come from. That'd be wonderful.
So let me do the kind of the very short version of a very, very long journey, an amazing life journey. But all of our life story is amazing, right? So I left school, studied to be a PE teacher. Doing that, I specialized in two areas: human biology, so physiology, and sports psychology. And it was then that I fell in love with what goes on inside the human brain and how the human brain can derail us from, the most admirable paths that we choose to take. Realized I didn't want to be a PE teacher, and left the town that I was born in. I was born and raised in the northeast of England. I left there to seek my fortune without knowing at all what that fortune was going to be or what I was going to do in life, and then fell into the world of financial services purely by accident. And realized early on, actually, this is an entire head game. Everything here is about psychology. Everything is about how people make important decisions. Not necessarily about, from the sports world, but just how they make important decisions about money. And I started to fine-tune my understanding of what goes on inside people's brains when they are making important financial decisions. I started that journey kind of 25 years ago. And I've never looked back, Dan. And then in the last maybe 15 years, I've kind of pivoted that to more applied neuroscience. So understanding the real detail of what goes on inside people's brains, and how that impacts the way that they create and form emotions and decisions and habits, but always with a lens or through a lens of money. So it's been an interesting journey, and it's led me to sitting here today, looking at your face, talking to you. How amazing, eh?
It's pretty cool, right? Pretty cool. And I think that the understanding that plans are wrong the moment that we think of them, and the journey that we go on. And, that I think that's something that we talk to a lot of people about. You've talked to me a lot about this, and we talk to our clients a lot about that journey, that the plan is wrong the moment it's created, and we don't know what tomorrow brings, and the journey's exciting and the destination is never ending. And so, that's a very short version of I know what is a very, very long story. Yeah. So what I love to talk to you about, and we obviously had a discussion before hitting record here, but what I'd love for you to share with the listeners is what you think as human beings, crucial phrase there, not as calculators or not as spreadsheets, but as human beings and the evolution of our brains and how they work. What do you think is one of our greatest challenges when it comes to this modern world retirement?
Well, there's probably two strands I can go down here. The first one is the kind of the more obvious one, which is all about a sense of meaning and purpose. There's an important fact here about retirement that I don't think gets talked about enough. I might be wrong in that statement, by the way, but I feel like it's not talked about enough. In that we, we go to school, we go to college, university, we get a job, whatever. And for the majority of our life, we work. In other words, we get up every day and we have purpose. We go to work and we do something, and hopefully that purpose has meaning, and we love what we do, and we get paid, which is a reward for the effort we put in, and all of that type of stuff, right? Everybody listening knows what that is. But we have meaning and we have purpose. And then all of a sudden, some day arrives when we don't need to go to work anymore. So you wake up one day, and if that was all you did, then your meaning and your purpose have gone overnight. You wake up and they're gone. Now you've got no purpose to get out of bed for. You've got no meaning. And so one of the challenges we face in retirement is ensuring that we have purpose, that we have meaning, that we have something to get out of bed for. I see this time and time again. I've seen this across my own family. People retire and then kind of just sit on a chair and think, I don't know what to do with my time, because they've just spent 40, 50 years knowing exactly what to do with their time. So it's almost as if they had no time on their hands. Now they've got all the time on their hands. They have no autonomy because they were always told what to do in the workplace. Now all of a sudden they've got complete autonomy, and it creates a bit of a messy situation in the head. It's a really difficult cognitive, psychological barrier to get over. And I feel that we don't talk about that challenge enough. We kind of go, yay, you've retired. Oh my God, you can do whatever you want. And people go, brilliant. How amazing is that? And then they wake up in the morning and think, oh, now what do I do? And so I think part of your job, the role of financial planners around the world, is to help people before they retire understand what that path looks like. That, when they reach this day, whatever that day is, ensuring that they still have some sense of purpose, some sense of meaning to get out of bed and just live a life that is, fulsome and happy and meaningful. So that's one strand. The second strand, which I won't go into in any depth because I will be here for 5 hours if I do, is what's going on actually inside the human brain. This thing is constantly receiving inputs from the world around us, through our senses. So touch, taste, smell, sight, all of that, our main senses. The human brain is just taking in electrical impulses all the time. Those electrical impulses create our reality. So that's how we perceive the world, through our senses. And when we create that perception or our subjective reality, it's from there that we create our emotions and we move forward to make decisions. Now, we can't turn these things off. They are always on. They are always turned on. And so as we retire, we don't stop getting inputs that make us think in a particular way or behave in a particular way. So we always need to be conscious of the fact that this thing in between our ears, this 3-pound spongy mass, the human brain, is always on, always taking data in, and is always pushing outputs out. And if we stop taking care or not focusing on what is coming into our brain, we can easily find ourselves on a path in retirement that could lead us to a place we may not want to go to. So, so meaning and purpose and keeping an eye on what's going on, or being conscious of what's going on inside our brain, are the biggest challenges I think people face in retirement. And that, by the way, was my succinct answer.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many strands to go down. I'm going to pick on a few. I mean, it reminds me of I played on golf, and I'm a kind of a fan of golf history, and one quote has stuck with me for years. And Jack Nicklaus once said that the hardest 6 inches in golf are the 6 inches between your ears, right. and it's I think the hardest 6 inches in retirement are the 6 inches between your ears. And I think so many people spend so much time focusing on what they are going to retire to, they actually don't realize what they're retiring from and the identity that they have created in their lives through their career. And so I think one of the real things that we see as eye-opening when we work with people is getting them to explore what they're retiring from. So, what are the non-financial aspects of work that you love and that you're going to miss? Because that sense of identity is one that really we should try and replace or work to replace when we go into retirement. And in a modern world, I mean, I'm not the biggest fan of the impact of social media but actually we've got an ability now in our retirement to be more connected than we've ever been to our past. So we can remain connected to friends and work colleagues and etc. Through social. So I think it's a really interesting challenge, right? That we face.
It is now, but there's another challenge, if you like, to layer on top of the challenges that we've just talked about over the last 2 minutes. Meaning and purpose, right? So who we are and our place in the world is a human trait. It's been with us since day one. Every single human being wants to feel part of a clan, a group, a crowd, whatever, a tribe.
Tribe. That's the big word, isn't it? Yeah.
Everybody wants to have a sense of meaning. Everybody wants to have a place in the world. That's a very human thing.
Yeah.
Right. It's almost hardwired into the human brain to do those things. There's actually parts of the human brain which actually deal with a lot of what I've just said. There are functions in the brain that are evolutionary wired to do those things. Retirement is a made-up thing. We made it up.
Yeah.
At some point in the human history, somebody said, I'm going to create a word called retirement.
Yeah.
And what that is, it's a line in the sand, and after which people don't need to work.
Yeah.
It's made up. So the human brain, therefore, has to process it as a made-up thing, which is going against the internal conversations of our evolution. 100%. And so there's this kind of conflict going on all the time, and sometimes I don't think we address that either.
And that made-up thing wasn't made up that long ago, right? So what I think it was. I think I read the other day that the first kind of social payments were made in Germany in the late 1800s. The kind of social security happened in the UK was it 1908 or 1909? That was only designed for people that were, that couldn't work and were ill. And it only lasted for, maybe 12, 18 months, because as soon as you couldn't work, you pretty much then ended up dying, right? That was kind of, didn't retire. So kind of this modern day retirement is not even 100 years old. So we're 1 or 2 generations into something. And in fact, it's gone up a level in the last generation of people retiring. My granddad retired and sat on the chair and had a pension that gave him a income that he had to live to. Now, this modern retirement is one that is completely different to that, right? So,
completely. And, there's you've got retirement made up. Money is in essence a human invention, right? So it's not in essence, it is a human invention. And so you've got the brain, this human old kind of 100,000-year-old brain trying to get to grips with money as an invention. And then a dynamic within that saying, now you need to take a bit of that money and move it over here because we have this thing called retirement that you need to think about. And the brain goes, man, that's a lot of information to process, given everything else I need to process on a day-to-day basis. So I'm not surprised that, people like you who do an amazing job helping people navigate this landscape sometimes come up against people who struggle to make important decisions when it comes to their futures and their retirement.
So if let's circle back to purpose and identity. So I think we do agree that one of the biggest challenges out there is purpose and identity kind of post-work or life after work, as we say, because again, given everything we've talked about, I think I'm not a massive fan of the word retirement. I think it does have negative implications on people's mindset now. So this kind of life after work doesn't necessarily mean, or life after career doesn't mean that you're never going to work again, right? So It's about purpose. So how do you think that we could, and the listeners that are at a stage of life that are thinking about this retirement, how do you think we could start to prepare ourselves as human beings to continue to have purpose and identity post-work?
you need to you've got to start as soon as you possibly can. This isn't a when I retire I'll find purpose. So outside of your working environment, you need to try and find those things that make you get out of bed, and that could be as simple as, let me use me as an example, right? I absolutely love barbecuing, right? Love it. I've got a proper authentic charcoal barbecue, and every opportunity when the sun's out now, by the way, it's about 1 degree, and my brain goes, ooh, I could barbecue something today. But for me, sitting on a beach with my wife and my little dog with a barbecue is like, that's heaven, right? That is my, oh my God, I love my life moment. I really do. Within there's purpose, right? Because actually what I want to be the best barbecue. I read books, I watch programs about it. I read everything about the best charcoals to use that retain the best heat, all of that type of stuff, right?
Talk about made-up industries. That is something that's taken off massively, right?
It really has, because of me. And they see my pictures on Twitter and go, I want to do that too. No, so it's a seemingly silly and simple example, but it's not, because actually I wake up and the sun's shining, and immediately my brain is wired to go, oh, this thing excites me. This thing makes me happy. I want to do this thing. Now, that might be going to see the kids. It might be going to watch a football match, a soccer match. It might be going for long walks with your friends. It might be going to the pub for food. It could be a whole host of things. It doesn't need to be a thing. I'm not saying purpose is a thing like work. It could be a whole host of many little things that when you put them together actually fills your week very easily. So we all do these things on a day-to-day basis whilst we are in our working life, but we just don't tend to label them as being an element or an ingredient in our purpose or giving us meaning. And so I would say to people, spend the time to sit and think, what makes you happy? What makes you content? What do you love doing? And no matter how small that is, write it down somewhere, because these become, it's like a recipe book, using that analogy. These become the ingredients of what a life well lived looks like. How do you build a life well lived after I retire? There's all your ingredients. Go barbecue, go to the football, go to the theatre, go for long walks with your friends, go to the pub once a week and have a lovely meal, drink a nice bottle of wine. All of these things combined give you a sense of meaning and purpose. So it's not one thing. It's a whole host of many little things. And I think people like you, Dan, when you have conversations with clients, to questioning and exploring their stories, their life stories with them, you can draw out those little ingredients that perhaps are hidden from view and help them construct the most amazing recipe for retirement.
I'm nicking that recipe for retirement. Trademark.
Yours.
Thanks.
Happy birthday.
I think that's amazing. I think that, look, there's a massive takeaway in there for me, that it's a couple of takeaways. Preparing early is important. I think we don't, because we in general are working and are being busy, we don't give enough airtime or mental capacity or headspace to actually think about what is important to us and what makes us happy. And as you said, I think those conversations I have with people are ones that we come out the other side, and the feedback is often, I didn't realize that it was the little things that made me happy. I didn't realize it was those, we often focus on the big thing of work, and we give little airtime to understanding once we've got time on our side, what the little things actually bring a smile to our face. And I think that's really important to establish, doing it early and really thinking about going back to basics. Because I think, as human beings, we're quite basic animals. And if we go back to basics, it does actually throw up a lot of simple things done well, done with intention, actually does result in a really, really happy retirement for people.
Yeah, that's right. And the problem is, Dan, is that we get in our own way sometimes, because we're so busy being busy.
Yeah.
That we sometimes don't stop to savor every moment truly.
No.
We don't We don't stand on the beach looking at the castle in the distance and kind of just look at it and go, I'm just going to savor this moment. I'm going to smell the air, feel the sand under my feet, feel the sun on my back, look at the castle and go, oh my God, this moment is incredible. We don't do it. We're so busy being busy that we go, oh, that's amazing. Let me take a quick picture of that. Move on. Let's go to the next thing. And so, but if we sit and think, consciously sit and think about what in my life brings me joy, what makes me happy, what makes me content, and you think back through your story, what you do is you start to find threads. You start to realize that standing on the beach looking at the castle, oh my God, I love that moment. Sitting on a beach having a barbecue, oh my God, I love that moment. Walking by the sea when I'm feeling a little bit anxious and just getting the iodine flooding into my body and my brain starting to relax, oh my God, I love that moment. You start to see, oh, actually, do you know what? I need to live near a beach. Because actually there's a thread here. Every time I'm near the sea, I am happy. I am content. So there's something that I need to work towards in my retirement. Unless you have these conscious conversations with yourself or with an advisor or with a friend, I don't care who it is, it's just as long as you have the conversation, you struggle to kind of draw out these little moments in your life story that are clear signs of what you potentially should be thinking about doing when you retire. So it's a conversation, exploration. It's everything's there waiting to be discovered.
And I think, look, that is, for everyone listening, that is the reason why I exist and set this podcast up effectively, because I think we try and make retirement a maths equation and we try and make it all about the numbers. And one of my favorite little sayings that I don't know whether it was you or a future guest on the podcast, Brian, your colleague, said, but human beings are storytellers, not calculators. And I think, so. I'll weed that out of Brian when I speak to him on a future episode. But I do think that we focus so much on the numbers, and we lose that sense of what true well-being gives us in retirement. And yeah, I think that people come to us because they think we're going to deliver some sort of maths equation and get huge light bulb moments when we don't talk about numbers for 3 or 4 meetings because it's so unimportant. It's, the numbers are irrelevant if we don't know what our purpose and identity is going to be. If you can't take advantage of your numbers, what's the point?
Exactly right. And at Shaping Wealth, we have this phrase, a phrase of funded contentment, which is underwriting a life that is meaningful to you. So what does that really mean? It means, working towards having enough cash in your bank to do the things that you want to do that make you happy and make you content. So go back to me as an example. It's the easiest example for me to give. If I love sitting on a beach so much with, barbecuing with my wife and my dog, if that is for me kind of like, oh my God, it's a holy grail of contentment, then I need to think, how do I do more of that when I retire? And I look at that and I think, it costs me a bag of charcoal, a bottle of wine and a bit of meat. That's it. I don't need 8 million quid in the bank.
There's your funded contentment list. Meat, wine, charcoal.
That's the point.
Yeah.
That's the point. So what we do is we sometimes get stuck on this kind of almost like the hedonic treadmill, if you like, of just constantly going and trying to get more, and then you get more and you want more, without stopping and realizing, hang on a second, how much do I really need to live a life of contentment and happiness? And it's, for many people, I would argue, it is not multi-millions of pounds. It really isn't. I could, and I get that I'm slightly different. I could live in a small, well-built beach shack. As long as I've got a bedroom and a bit of a place to work and and it's nice on a beach. It doesn't need to be big at all. And as long as I can access the sea and I can access the sand and I can go to the shop and I need to go to the shop and I'm near society to a degree, I'm actually not asking for a lot. I'm not asking for a 6-bedroom mansion in 75 acres of land that has a triple garage so I can park my Ferrari and my Bentley. That is not, sometimes people think that's what successful retirement is, and it is so not that. A successful retirement is you living a life of contentment. It's you waking up every day and doing things that make you happy and going to bed at night feeling like you've just lived the best life you can possibly live. That is what successful retirement looks like. It is not about having. It's not about how much money you have in the bank. Yes, that's a factor. I get it, but it's not the be all and end all factor in the retirement story.
I think for everyone listening, pause there and hit that little like circle with the arrow 30-second back thing, and hit that and go back and listen to that again, because that is unbelievable wisdom that everybody needs to hear. So thank you, Neil. That was amazing. I actually drew something today and put it out on social media that had 3 circles, and it was kind of this massive circle that says what the world tells me is enough, a circle within that circle that says what I think is enough, and then a little circle within that circle that says actually this is what's enough. And everybody that I work with, bar none, in fact, when we get to the nuts and bolts of what's most important to them, what their purpose and identity is, that enough figure or that enough feeling is so much less than what they thought it was ever going to be. So
yeah, it is.
I think
it really is. And you know, mate, one of the things, and I'll tell you this story very quickly. I'm on my 3rd business, Shaping Wealth. I'm the co-founder with Brian Portnoy and Joy Leary. Brian founded the business. Joy and I joined Brian. It's my 3rd business in essence. Before this, I had 2 businesses that were mine. Startup businesses, all in the human behavior space. And every single time people have said to me at some point, I bet you can't wait until you sell it for 50 million, 60 million, 20 million, 10 million, whatever. And I kind of go, it's not what I'm doing it for. And they kind of go, oh, really? What do you mean you're not doing it? What are you doing it for? And my genuine, honest, truthful answer is, I'm doing it to leave a legacy. I want to leave this earth having left a mark on it. Doesn't matter how small. If I can change one person's life, and that one person, their changes impact their family, and then the next generation are impacted by that change, that for me is success. And I will die a happy man if I can achieve some form of legacy attached to me. It's the money's a bonus. It genuinely is an added bonus, right? Do I want to get paid? Of course I do. I still need to pay my bills. I've still got a mortgage and all of those things that I have to pay for. Of course, I need to get paid. But money is not the reason I get out of bed in the morning. I sit at my desk and work as many hours as I possibly can in the hope that I will make a difference in the world and leave a legacy. And I think sometimes we need to sit down as part of the retirement story and think, actually, what is it I want to achieve here? Is it gazillion pound in the bank? Fine, if it is. I'm not saying that's wrong. Or is it to leave a legacy? Is it to make a difference in the world? And you'll realize that when you're back to your story, when you then analyze that through the lens of enough, it's not as big as you think it is.
Love that. Absolutely. I'd love to just touch on a bit of your expertise, and we don't need to kind of dig into the well of the human brain because we could spend hours. But for the next couple of minutes, and before we kind of hit the home straight here, what does go on then in our brain? What are the things that that scientific research now has come on so far? We know so much about how our brains are wired and react to these situations that we face ourselves in. What are those kind of emotions and behaviours that sit behind this kind of transition out of work and into a retirement? Could we spend a couple of minutes on that? Or pick one thing. I mean, we can't spend a couple of minutes. I might need you to get back. You might need to come back on at some point in the future.
And do a specific lesson on what goes on in people's brains.
Yeah.
Let's do this in a whirlwind way. So, number one, the human brain is in essence a data gathering machine, and it uses the data that it receives in order to predict what is about to happen in the world. That's a basic function, right, of the brain. In other words, I'm listening to you, my brain is processing the words, and those words are creating a perception, a reality. But what those words are also doing at the same time is generating and creating emotion in me. So we are the creator of our emotions based on the data that we receive into our brain. So if we look out the window and we see what we perceive to be a threat, right? The data input is into our visual cortex. The human brain processes that data. It goes threat, and it generates an emotion, fear, anxiety, whatever that emotion is, in response to the data coming into the brain. So our emotions are constantly, they're like the tide. They ebb and flow constantly based on the data that's coming into the human brain. So in a working world, the majority of data coming into our brain is from our working lives, right? The people we mix with, the job we do, the expertise we build up, the mastery that we have that we are working towards. When we flip into retirement, the data input is very different. A lot of the data input that I've had for 30 years vanishes and new data comes into the brain. So the brain, in essence, has to relearn what those signals mean. And it needs to adapt to those signals, to the new data. That might throw up new emotions. It might throw up new feelings that people have never had before. And they may go, oh, what does this mean? Why am I feeling like this? Know this. It is all perfectly normal. That is how the human brain has worked for millions of years. You know, it takes in data and it generates a response, a response that is based on the data that it's receiving. So retirement will feel, from a cognitive brain perspective, different to your working life, because it is different, because the inputs are different. That's fine. You just need to learn to adapt to what those signals mean and respond accordingly. That's one thing. But you know, that's number one. Number two is we also need to be conscious and aware that, you know, back down to when we talked about money being a new invention, retirement being a new invention. If we go back to the beginning, like 5.5 million years ago, you know, when we climbed out of trees and became bipedal, walked around on two legs. If we take that as our period of time, for the majority of the time as a species, we have lived in what is known as an immediate return environment. In other words, if it rained, I took shelter. If I was hungry, I ate. So whatever happened, I just did it there and then. You know, no such thing as refrigeration, all of those things that we love today. None of that happened over the last 5 million years, really.
Yeah.
And so that species, that part of our journey was all about immediate reward. If we needed to do it, we just did it. We now live in what is known as a delayed return environment. In other words, we do things today where the benefit won't be, or the benefit is at some future point. Retirement is the classic example. Telling a 20-year-old, save your money today for something that you're going to hopefully experience when you're 70.
Madness.
Those words, that data input, right? That's data. That data goes into the brain. And the brain kind of goes, hang on, for 5 million years, I've done everything immediately. If I wanted it, I just did it. And so there is this constant kind of evolutionary conflict going on of the brain going, I come from an immediate return environment, mate. Stop telling me to save for something that might never happen. And it's why there is this constant conflict between our present self, you know, the Neil and the Dan today, and our future self, the Neil and the Dan in 20 years' time. There's this constant conflict because intellectually we know what the right thing is to do for our futures, because we are more intelligent, we are wealthier, healthier, and wiser than we've ever been in the history of mankind. And yet we struggle, right? So people say you need to save today for the future, and intellectually you go, I know, but there's something in here that's going, but I don't want to do this. I don't want to. I want to buy the new iPhone. It's just come out. It looks amazing. You know, I want to do this. I want to go on holiday. I want to do this. So, number one, we've got this data input and it shifts. Number two, the brain is wired for this immediate return. So, if you kind of, you know, people listening to this, your clients and the more broader audience, if you were making a decision that is future based, but you get this urge just to, that's difficult, I just want to do this now. Know that is normal. That's how we've been wired for a long time. And we can't just flip a switch and tell the brain to now think differently. So, you know, I think, Dan, I'll stop on those two. Those two things are quite important things to think about. But the one that I would say people need to be really conscious of and not beat themselves up over is the first thing. When you retire, your landscape changes, your data inputs change. Therefore, don't expect the same outputs. at all. Just be conscious that the world's different, and just take time to just go with the groove. Just go, okay, I'm going to learn what retirement feels like for me. Okay, that's a new feeling. Interesting. What does that mean? What does that signal tell me? How do I respond to that? The mistake people make is thinking that the data inputs are going to remain the same throughout all of their life, and therefore the outputs will always be the same. And that's just not true. It's not how we work.
Amazing. I mean, look, so many light bulb moments there for me again, and hopefully for the listeners. That just, the phrase I use a lot is that the plan is wrong the moment it's created. Ongoing planning is kind of, because life changes, and tomorrow, we don't know what tomorrow brings. And the journey is more important than the destination, because the destination will probably never be arrived at because it changes all the time. Right. So, those inputs to outputs is a constant change. Amazing. So look, as we wrap this up, and we're probably going to recap a little bit about what we've talked about, but I'd love to ask you what I'm dubbing. I love chocolate. My favourite chocolate bar is the Toblerone. So what I've... No? Oh, no. Okay.
It's nice. It's nice, but get stuck in your teeth.
Yeah. Yes, it does. So what I'm labelling as the Toblerone of truth. So I've got 3 questions that I want to ask you, if that's all right. See where I'm going there? See where I'm going?
Yeah, Toblerone of truth. I like it. I like the alliteration. Yep.
So we've already covered some of this, but I just want you in the next couple of minutes before we wrap up, just short, sharp answers to these be amazing. So, and I think I know where this is going to go. Neil, what will your retirement look like?
Warm weather, sitting on a beach, relaxed. I don't think I will ever stop working, because I find I take too much joy in understanding what's going on inside people's brains. I don't think I'm ever going to stop working per se, but I'd like to think that I take my foot off the accelerator quite a lot and just end up sitting down, chilling out, eating good food, and just watching the world go by. I love doing that anyway. So my retirement, a bit of work, but incredibly slow and chilled.
Amazing. Can I join you on some of those beach barbecues?
Too right.
Awesome. And when it comes to emotions and behaviours around our money, can you give me what you believe is either or really the most positive and or the most negative emotions or behaviours that either you display or you see in others? Is there one or two that you could just cover off quick?
Am I allowed to challenge you?
You can. Absolutely, as long as it's not too hard.
I would never be hard on you. I struggle with the word positive and negative, and I'll tell you why. Because the way the human brain works and the way it develops emotions, they are responses to the signals coming in, and they are the brain's best guess at how to deal with the data coming in. People don't sit and go, right, I'm going to respond emotionally in a negative way to what I've just seen. They don't do that. The brain's already decided that for them. So whilst an emotion may lead to an outcome that is less than optimal, I've always struggled with labeling things positive and negative, because I think it gives people the wrong sense. It gives people a sense that the way that their brain has naturally worked is wrong, and it's not. It's right for them in the moment. So it's not a challenge per se. It's just a clarification, I guess, on a point. And it's why I often struggle with this question when people say, "Tell me about positive and negative emotions," and you can go sadness, anger, wrath. They're all negative, and happiness and joy and fun. They're all positive. And I get that, right? I get that classification. What I tend to see, based on emotions and how people respond to the data coming in, are 3 things that we tend to do that can fall on the more negative side, if you like. The first one is self-sabotage. So, we have an emotional response, and we kind of go, I'm not going to do this, or I'm going to do this other thing instead. And even though you know the right thing to do, you do the thing, the opposite, because you feel or you perceive it to be a better solution. And we sabotage our own futures and our own happiness far too easy sometimes. That's number one. Number 2 is, we may have an emotional response that tells us, right, I need to do these things, but we're also surrounded by other people, and we integrate into their lives. And we can easily be led by peer pressure. So, example, if I want to go to the gym, start going to the gym more often, but all of my mates are going out to pubs and having meals and drinks and stuff, and that's all I'm exposed to, then it becomes really hard for me to ignore the peer pressure of them saying, just come with us and just go out it on my own to, to do what I need to do, go to gym. And the third thing is, kind of the environmental architecture, if you like. So if I want to make important decisions about my retirement, then I need to be conscious of the environment in which I'm in. And is that environment allowing me to self-sabotage? Example I use all the time when I talk about this is if you're trying to cut down on the donuts and you go to the same coffee shop every morning that bake fresh donuts, you're going to find it really hard to cut down on the donuts. You need to find another coffee shop. So the environment which we place ourselves in also can create this negative outcome, if you like, or less than optimal outcome. So those three things are on the negative side. On the positive side, I tell you the one thing, people, when you go through what we've talked about today, when you sit down and you really find the ingredients to write that recipe for retirement, that brings you just such a sense of joy and happiness and, oh my God, this feels amazing. And that generates a whole host of positive emotions in us. So for me, when it comes to money, I don't think people exhibit per se negative or positive emotions, but they generate emotions in their head that lead them to actions. And those actions can have a negative or a positive outcome based on how people implement or use the data and the outputs from the human brain. So I think that makes sense.
Amazing answer. And I've been taken to school, so love it. Thank you very much. Love it. Absolutely love it. No, amazing. And I think that we've had, just quickly, we've had conversations previously about, hating the word irrational because we are all perfectly rational in our decisions, right? So it kind of leads into that. So amazing. Last question before we wrap up. So I'm 55 and I've established that I've got enough money for the retirement that I desire. What would be your number one tip for a happy, healthy and wealthy retirement?
I'm going to steal a line from somebody else. Years ago, I stood and watched a UK financial planner who then went on to found the Institute for Financial Wellbeing, Chris Budd. I watched him at the conference and he said, if you want to be happy in life, or if you want, he was talking about well-being. And he said, what you need to do is find out what makes you happy and spend your money on that. I'll never forget that line. Find out what makes you happy and spend your money on that. And it's almost like never a truer word's been spoken. So you're 55, you've got enough money in the bank. Just find out what makes you happy and go and spend your money on that.
Amazing.
Do that thing. You know this, right? It's a well-trodden cliche, it's a well-trodden phrase. Life isn't a rehearsal. This is it. You've only got one chance, blah, blah, blah. It's true. So find out what makes you happy, spend your money on that, and live a life of happiness and contentment because you've only got one of them and you never know when it's going to end. So just live a life. My God, imagine that. Just figuring out what makes you happy and just spending your money on that and waking up every day with a smile on your face and going to bed every night feeling satisfied with a smile on your face. How amazing would that be?
What an amazing way to wrap up a wonderful, wonderful episode of the podcast. Neil, look, a massive thank you from me for your time and wisdom. An amazing conversation. Thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you for everyone for listening to the Humans versus Retirement podcast. It's been a pleasure to have you with us today. Until next time, take care.